Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this very grey February morning. Today, we're going to cover why SMEs need robust security to stop modern AI-powered threats. So just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping from my side. So first off, this webinar is being recorded, as you may have heard. We will be able to provide the recording to any participants following this webinar, likely this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So if you would like to share it internally or you'd like to re-review it, we will be providing it. Please ask any questions throughout the webinar. We do have a Q&A section at the end, and our specialist Matt, who I will introduce shortly, will answer any of your questions. So please, throughout, if you have a question, fire it in the Q&A section on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll get around to it. This is a mixed abilities webinar, so there are a variety of people that are joining, from beginners through to perhaps some security specialists. So if you feel that the content's maybe a little simple or a little complex, that's the reason for it. It's really to adapt it to a range of different abilities and knowledge. And then finally, there is a dedicated consultation opportunity afterwards with Matt Brannigan. So I will give you a bit more information about what you can potentially do moving forward and how we can look at perhaps helping you if you find any of the content in today's webinar interesting. So just before we begin, a little bit of a shameless plug, a little bit about who Landor Services are. So we help ultimately businesses manage their IT so that they can do what they're there to do, to manage their business, to grow their business, to spend time in other areas. So we have access to all industry-leading technology, and we're able to then consult and adapt to it. We take a non-biased approach and really consult to identify what your pain points are and find a solution that fits. We don't shoehorn anything in. We have a reliable best practice approach for service delivery. So we're ITIL and ISO best practice aligned. And the next one, we have experienced print, security, and IT technicians in our help desk. And as many people may know, perhaps in the IT world, print probably tends to be the most annoying part of it. So we have a variety of knowledge and skill set that are able to help across that broad range of technology. And then finally, for those of you that may not have heard of Landor or that have heard of Landor and know about us, may ask a question about cybersecurity. So we acquired a cybersecurity company in 2025, which allows us to give this wonderful presentation around security, and that's where a lot of the technical expertise and the capability of someone like Matt comes from. So our mission is to inspire growth for our customers by deploying smart technology solutions. Speakers today, myself is Matthew Sewell. As I said earlier, I'm the marketing manager. I am the host. Today I have joining me a very capable individual, Matt Brannigan. Bit confusing, there's two Matts on the call and a Max as well, so quite a few M's. Matt Brannigan comes with a variety of skills and capabilities, has over a decade in cybersecurity, and most recently has been developing a large area in AI. So thanks very much for joining the call, Matt. Looking forward to seeing what you have to say today, and there's always something whenever I speak with you that kind of opens my eyes to a new world of things. So looking forward to seeing what you have to present today.
Thanks very much. Thank you all for joining us. Today's going to be a bit of an overall view of what the current threat landscape is really looking like, where some elements have changed, why we're having to adapt the way that we are approaching cybersecurity, especially with the emergence of AI, and in a big way, how it's affecting the SME community. So a lot of what we're having a look at nowadays is almost an inversion thinking exercise. How are we looking at what the threat actors are really going out there and looking at in the market today? So a lot of the time it's around what threats are facing the SMEs, how we're learning about those changes that are coming through, understanding what those changes really mean, and then discovering ways to solve those problems once they come in. There's an inversion thinking exercise that comes through with this when looking at from a threat actor's point of view as well. They've got the same tools available today. They've got a massive economy that's happening around all of the cybercrime and all of the AI that's coming out now as well. So they are very well equipped, very well funded, very well resourced to be able to push through a lot of these changes. So the fight really is becoming around who's got the best tools available at the moment, who's got the best processes involved as well. So all of these elements will kind of come together as we go a little bit further. So the first thing that I want to run through is the cybersecurity is built off of 3 pillars, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. And it really comes down to having all 3 of these pillars really secure, having all of these pillars really well-rounded is what gives you a really good approach. So the 3 pillars are people, process, and technology. And this, as I said, this is the foundation stone of all cybersecurity practice nowadays. You can go and get a wonderful technology, and that'll put you in a really good place. If you don't have the correct processes around that, or your people aren't trained in how to use those tools or how to identify threats coming through, that technology can only do so much. If your people are trained to identify a phishing email, but are getting blasted with them constantly because you don't have the right technology stack in line, probability is something is going to happen. And then when that something does happen, it's about having the correct processes in place to make sure that you know what to do next once a breach occurs, or ideally on how to prevent that breach from happening in the first place, identifying strange behaviors that you link up to the business to go and say, I'd like you to have a look at this, please. So these are the 3 main pillars that we always have a look at whenever we are building out a cybersecurity solution. Whenever we're looking at a customer, we really want to identify where are you currently sitting here, and how can we build on this foundation to get you into a better place. So some of the challenges, and I'm sure a lot of you will be able to identify or at least see that you may be feeling some of these as well. It's limited in-house skills, a lack of time, which is probably the biggest one nowadays. There's something called alert fatigue, which is just the amount of information that's coming through on a day-to-day basis that needs to be handled, needs to get human eyes on it. And then stretched teams. Okay, shifting compliance requirements. The goalposts keep on getting moved. They keep on getting more stringent, and at the moment, it's becoming quite difficult to find out who's enforcing it, how they're enforcing it, why they're enforcing it, but all we know is that it's going to be enforced. So this is something that we are keeping track of on a day-to-day basis to kind of remove that burden away from you so that you don't really need to go and dedicate all of that time and resource to understanding it. Then outdated security controls, legacy systems, constrained budgets. It's all very real pains that businesses are feeling nowadays. Look, a lot of the times when we're having a look at legacy systems, they used to be 10, 15 years old. Unfortunately, now they are 3 years old, 1 year old. The world is shifting so quickly that our protocols that we had 3 years ago, which were cutting edge and were meant to be future-proofing us, just aren't there anymore. And it becomes difficult to try and keep up with those. So if I had to run through some of the elements now, some of you may be familiar with this analogy here that we'll bring up. So when looking at a cybersecurity solution, the best way to really equate it and to kind of understand it from a personal perspective is looking at your own house. So trying to understand, how are you securing your own house? So with some of these elements, you've got your roof, which is providing you a lot of comfort and security. You've got your alarm system, which is monitoring and detecting any problems that may be coming around. You've got your walls and your windows, which effectively become your firewalls and your endpoints. Those are on the edge. They're making sure that you are covered. Then you've got a house which holds all of your data, all of your information, the lovely photo albums, your cute dog, which is not going to stand up to any intruder coming in. And then you've got your regular maintenance. So you're making sure that the windows are still latched, that the lock actually works, all of those different elements. So the house analogy has been around for a long time. It's really just an idea of how do we ensure that we are conveying cybersecurity, which can be a mystical and convoluted thing, into something in a real space. We're going to bring up this presentation, this slide a couple of times today. And the simple reason is that this has been the standard for a long time, but unfortunately, it's just changed. A lot of this idea is about making sure that threats don't get in, that we've got an environment where we are holding the fort. effectively. We're making sure that nobody's getting into that house at all. Unfortunately, even with that locked door, even with making sure that the windows are closed, that our alarm system is looking out for any alerts that are coming through, that all of our data in the business is safe, the entire landscape has just changed. Okay, we have AI is already in the house. Now, from a cybersecurity standpoint, this is slightly terrifying because we've just allowed agents into the building, and it may not be an agent, it may be shadow AI, it may be an experiment that one of the teams was putting together, and now it's being pushed off to the side. These are very capable tools. They have memory, so they can remember any data that they are coming across, from credentials to files. They've got persistence 24/7. They will not stop. And then the most terrifying part of all of it is that they're automated. So they will go and solve problems that they believe that they've got. We'll go into how that can be manipulated a bit more when we go further. But these are some of the biggest issues here. So it's not just that they can copy your keys, which has become a very big and a big risk, and it's a reality nowadays. It's that we've let them into the house. We are building them and giving them access. We're giving them permissions into our files, into SharePoint, into Teams, into our email. They can contact our customers if we don't put the correct guardrails and we don't put the correct permissions on them. All right. And then effectively, it's now that we've got these agents in the building, how do we actually defend against them? So this is one of the biggest issues that we've got nowadays. With most users, we can identify what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. We can follow those data streams. We can understand what processes they're using. With agents, because they're moving at machine speed, it becomes a much more difficult task to do. We're really now trying to understand what tools are they calling on, who are they contacting, what databases are they using, how are they covering up their tracks, because trust me, that is something that they are very capable of doing. And if you don't have the correct training data that's been put into these tools, you don't have the correct guardrails, you don't have the correct permissions, restrictions that are put on them, they can be manipulated to start attacking your own environment. Okay.
I think an interesting use case or a scenario recently that occurred, Matt, that you were telling me about was the OpenClaw Maltbook situation,
Absolutely.
which I think demonstrates that situation perfectly as to how dangerous it can be that ultimately AI now is inside the house.
Exactly that. And I think if anybody on the call isn't familiar with what happened, so ClaudeBot, which then moved to Maltbot, which then became OpenClaw, is effectively an agent that people are putting onto Mac Minis, into their devices, and effectively giving them full control over that PC, as well as different SaaS tools or communication tools that they might have. So WhatsApp, there was somebody who was getting phoned by their agent constantly asking what he wants to do next. The problem is, it wasn't too bad when people were working with these agents individually. It was when all of those agents started to come together onto a social media platform and they started talking amongst themselves. After that happened, there was, and please understand, there was some human involvement in this, but it was very much a proof of concept of how dangerous this can be. They set up a cryptocurrency, which was a pump and dump that lasted 30 minutes. They made $16 million. From that, they went and they started to purchase breach tactics, ransomware as a service off of the dark web. They started to breach environments. Once they got that data, they set up a black market and they basically auctioned all of that data off. This all happened in 2 days.
Okay, I guess just to clarify as well, I guess when Matt refers to they, he's talking about cyber criminals utilizing AI, not necessarily the AI doing it autonomously.
Absolutely. So there's always going to be a step, at least at the moment, where there is a person in the loop making sure that this can happen. Chaos is something that cyber criminals absolutely love. They can take advantage of it. If they can utilize a couple of agents to go and create chaos, they've got one agent that they've given very strict instructions to go and grab data, to go and put it, back it up to a certain location, and then to go and link up to a black market to go and sell it.
Yeah,
that's completely possible now. And it's not possible in a month or in a year. That is not possible in a couple of hours, in a couple of days. So the speed of this has just increased dramatically.
Yeah.
I think if we're having a look at AI in the greater market, we have to kind of balance it out, right? So it's not all terrifying. Some of it is really great. Some of the things that are happening are completely unbelievable. We just need to be aware of all of these things that are happening and know how to defend against it. So to give you a bit of a breakdown on some of the big advancements that are happening with the help of AI, solving problems like the ERDOS problems in maths. These are challenges that have been identified in maths that effectively never had a solution, or some of them had a solution. There's a couple of hundred. And basically, we've got AI now that's able to run through those, troubleshoot them, and actually solve those problems. Those problems being solved help us create better systems, help us create better technology, better cryptography, all of those different things. So that's a huge step, in a huge progressive step that we're taking with AI being in the loop there. Then we've got AlphaFold 2. So effectively, what's happened here is that we've now got a protein database, effectively having a look at all of the different sequences of amino acids, and we're now able to predict what happens in drug trials in certain occasions from looking at those amino acids, from looking at how the proteins break in, how you can replace certain proteins to potentially get a better result at the end of the day. Okay, so that's all wonderful. At the same time, in 2024, 67.4% of phishing attacks incorporated AI. Okay, so it's being used for the inverse as well. And this is where it's getting slightly terrifying from a security standpoint, is a phishing attack from AI is always personalized to the person. They're scraping data off of LinkedIn, from your emails. They'll identify who you're talking to, how that person writes, so that it looks similar. They'll also link it to certain things that are happening in your calendar to make sure that they are hitting on all of those marks. Now, that can be done by a human user on a day-to-day basis. They said it takes about 16 hours to put together a very good phishing email. It takes AI under 4 minutes. Okay, and there's a hit rate of 80% on those phishing mails. What gets more terrifying is that these were the stats from 2024. What we're seeing come forward now is that with the progression that AI is taking, it can do that same phishing email with the same efficacy, but now push it out to 10,000 people at once. All right, so we'll get a bit more into that. Let's go with some of the better news, right? So we've got 88% of SMEs reporting that they're implementing AI. And this is a big step. I mean, the SME market is the biggest adopter of AI in the world right now. Nobody's really keeping up with that. 73% of those say that's increased their competitive advantage. Okay, so these are much better stats than we were initially seeing, because implementing AI can be a bit of a challenge in itself, as we'll break down, and I'm sure you've got an idea of yourselves. It's not always the easiest thing to bring in. AI agents aren't exactly the easiest tools to build. And then on top of that, you need to ensure that your environment is in the correct place to be able to actually deploy those agents in anyway. So we're seeing a massive turn in terms of positive deployments of AI now going into environments. Okay? Just to bring ourselves back into reality here, AI-enabled attacks rose to 47%. Okay, so this isn't just phishing emails now. This is actually AI within the chain of attack, effectively delivering perfect breach packs. Matt and I have discussed this. So there's a podcast on YouTube that you are more than welcome to go and have a look at, where we actually discuss how AI is joining in the attack front, not just from designing the attacks to designing the code that can be used to implement, but actually performing the attack itself. And this isn't being done by specialized AI that you need to be hosting yourself, that you need to have any real technical knowledge. These are the same AI tools that we're using on a day-to-day basis to ask, how long should I boil an egg for? So it's the scalability of these tools is absolutely incredible. Again, these are some of the areas that we've seen to watch out for. If we go through to some of the bigger things that are happening, what we're looking at now is, with all of this AI coming into the environments, and with that stat of 88% of SMEs, we're now seeing it really impact larger spaces in society as well. So we've got a diagnostic orchestrator. Okay, so this is a tool from Microsoft that's effectively looking at all of the data coming through from a medical center, understanding what the MRIs look like, what the symptoms look like, and what the patient is really experiencing. And it's got an 85.5% accuracy when looking at diagnosing complex medical cases. Okay, so with experienced physicians, it's 20%. That's not a low number. That 20% is pretty much industry standard. The body can be a very complex thing. The thing that most of these physicians can't do is they can't look at all of the data and compare it immediately. That's where AI becomes absolutely incredible. The amount of information that it can pass, especially for a medical diagnosis, becomes absolutely incredible. They are able to look at all of the imaging and everything pixel by pixel to really understand what's happening in that environment. Okay, so let's have a look at it. What are some of the new attack methods that are coming out? All right, I think it's very important for us to kind of start off with something that I've mentioned a few times now, AI coercion. So this is when we're talking about the AI being within the house itself, having the agents, having the chatbot that we are talking to on a day-to-day basis. These can be manipulated quite effectively as well. I mean, one of the tricks that we've seen is you can get an AI chatbot to start to produce malicious code for you if you either speak to it for long enough, if you either get it to look at it from a different perspective. So if you are saying, I'm looking to defend my environment, this is what I've got, this is what I've got. How do I make sure that I've got no gaps? Where are the areas that I would think that somebody would attack? If you take that approach, it will start to give you breach tactics in terms of how to get into your environment. What we've seen some threat actors do is they've spoken to AI in poetry, and effectively it drops off the guardrails because it's actually looking at the poem construction rather than the words being said, and it focuses on that instead. So all of these elements can happen. This can happen within your environment as well. If somebody's got access to yours or a staff member's private AI that they've got a link onto and they've got the password, they can start to put in some of that malicious code. They can start to put in some of that prompt injection to make sure that your AI is no longer just working for you at the moment, that it will look for data, that it can send that data off. Okay, and then we've got threat actor group accelerations. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you have seen in the news that we're seeing bigger and bigger breaches nowadays. It's no longer a couple of 100,000 accounts were breached. It's a couple of 100 billion profiles that have been scraped off of the internet that have been taken. We're looking at these tools and saying that they're wonderful for productivity. So are threat actors, okay? They are now able to use these tools to expand their abilities far further. They no longer need to go and do that research that they did before. They have an agent that they would have built that'll go and do that for them. It will qualify weak leads for them. If they've got an instruction to go and say, go and poke a few businesses and tell me which ones don't have robust security. Threat actors now have a list of perfect targets to go after. They pass it off to another agent and say that list of 10,000, go attack all of them at once now. All right. These groups are getting smaller. They're getting more sophisticated. The problem is the cybersecurity market is very big. The cybercrime market is $10.5 trillion. If it was a country, it would be the third largest economy in the world. Okay. We are able to catch less than 1% of these people. And it's not because we don't have the right tools in place, it's because they're attacking from different countries and bureaucracy can sometimes get in the way of us actually being able to track people down. Okay, so it's a very low risk business for a lot of these guys. And now they've got that $10.5 trillion that they can effectively pull on to get the best resources, to get the best skills, to get the best outsourcing. One of the biggest problems that we're seeing now is effectively the org charts that we're seeing from these threat actor groups. You'll have 3 to 5 core members of a team. They will then reach out to go and get a breach specialist, somebody who will get them credentials to get into an environment. Then they'll have a DDoS specialist that they'll call on for larger attacks. All of this is becoming a more sophisticated game. And now we're saying that we're asking a couple of tools in our environment to defend against that. We've got a massive problem on our hands right now that they are far more advanced through the cyberspace than we are right now. Okay, which gets us to nation-state threats. Okay, this is becoming real. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of information coming through around supply chain attacks and making sure that we're auditing our own supply chains to ensure that they have certain credentials in place. This is becoming a very real scenario in the world. If you have a country where the water supply gets hit by a breach, public transport, cell phone networks get hit by a breach, and it takes a week to get those up, you've effectively crippled an economy for a week. Okay, that becomes a very difficult thing to come back from. This is becoming more and more of a problem that we're seeing now. You know, there's always the usual suspects when we're having a look at this, but there's new suspects that are coming through now. With the rate that all of this is accelerating, you don't need to be a nation state to be able to attack the way a nation state would. It's becoming easier for these threat actor groups to be able to do this. So it really is imperative that we take cybersecurity very seriously right now. And that's why compliance and regulation is becoming very, very stringent around all of these spaces. As I mentioned, those supply chain attacks, with all of the compliance that's coming through, we're now having a look at the new cybersecurity and resilience bill, which is very aligned to NIS2 in Europe as well, which effectively is forcing businesses to go and audit their own supply chain to ensure that their cybersecurity practices and their data practices are in line. The problem with this is if you've got a supplier who has no security around them and they are API linked into your business, or they are constantly sending you emails, you're creating a vulnerability in that environment. So it's becoming more and more of a challenge nowadays to defend against those. So effectively, they're pushing it on the business to go and audit their own supply chains to ensure that you are as secure as you believe that you are. Okay, so heading back to the house analogy now, we've got these agents in the house. Okay, now not all AI comes through the same way. As you can see there, we've got in-house agent who's built by the sales team. It's got access to the CRM team, and potentially it's got one or two people who are making sure that nothing bad is happening there. We've got zombie agents, and yes, that is the official name for them nowadays. These are effectively agents that were brought up from experimentation. Okay, so somebody was trying to put an AI agent together, and effectively the project was put to the side. That agent still has access and permissions in the environment. Then we've got shadow AI. This is effectively anybody logging into an AI chatbot on their side in their window. This is being used on a day-to-day basis. I've got 5 AI on my phone, but I don't connect my phone to a business network ever, simply because of the reason that I've got all of those vulnerabilities on my phone. Okay, so where do we come in on all of this? We give you the ability to be able to identify what these agents actually are, what they're doing, what level they're at. We treat it almost like a user by looking at the behavioral analytics, okay? So you can see over here, we've got labels on here. It's a sales outreach agent. It's currently online. We understand what its permissions are. It was created by Seymour Cash, and it's now at a good space. We've got a green. It's not doing anything strange. Then we've got our shadow agent over there. This is red. It's already passed on personal information, okay? This is something that becomes a real challenge in businesses. With people wanting to use AI for their email and all of that, are we sure that we know what information is going on there? You may be feeling safe because you're removing any identifiable information on there, but is everybody in your staff doing that? Is everybody who's using AI on their phone doing that? Those connections can be done, okay? And then the zombie agents, okay? Absolutely a red zone. They're completely unmanaged. This one was created by many problems, and it's still got permissions to SharePoint, Teams, and Outlook, but nobody's watching it because it was an experiment. It wasn't used. That is exactly the type of agent that a threat actor will try and attack, okay? The biggest problem that we've got nowadays is that threat actors are logging in. They're no longer breaking in. If they've got your credentials, they can get into your environment. I can promise you that they are looking for that agent immediately. It's already got everything that they're looking for. Okay, so let's run through what some of the impact is from AI and security. I'm just going to bring all of these up here, and we can kind of run through. So speed. We're moving from an environment where breaches used to take a couple of days, hours at most, or at least, to be able to get into environments. We've now got minutes and seconds. We can't keep up with that. Humans in SOCs can't keep up with that. Security operations centers can only operate at a certain speed. We've now got threats that are coming in at machine speed. They are coming in so fast, we need to be able to identify them. The sheer volume. 3 years ago, it was not possible to take 10,000 customized phishing emails and send them out all at once. Today, that's easy. It's really easy. You can do it from your phone. It's absolutely incredible. Skill. You don't need to know how to code anymore. You don't need to know how to do complex systems. The AI already knows how to do that. You just need to make sure that you're directing it in a way that works, okay? Detection. We're now moving into a space where we were looking at threat actors from who's in our environment who shouldn't be there. We've now in a space where you've got an AI agent logging in. It does look like it belongs there. Maybe you created it. Maybe it was an experiment and it's that zombie agent that's still got access and permissions. We're finding it more and more difficult to identify what threats are actually really in the environment nowadays. The consequences of this are we can't react fast enough. We can't react to every problem that's coming through. We don't have necessarily the skill unless we're using AI to defend against this as well. And it's just becoming more and more difficult to try and understand what's actually happening in our environments. Okay, all of this is a day-to-day problem. It's not just about looking at AI as the threat. We need to start looking at AI in our defense as well. How are we making sure that AI is identifying all of these problems? Okay. So I want to run you through what cybersecurity used to look like. And we're saying outdated cybersecurity. I mean, this was the model really not too long ago at all. Trusting users. Did they have the right password when they're on the right device? EDR and XDR technology, firewalls. We're making sure that there's antivirus on there to make sure that we understand the known threats. We're cleaning up the tenants so there aren't any zombie users on there. We're making sure that we've got awareness training to ensure that our staff knows what's happening all the time, okay? And then we're running off of passwords. The problem that we've got today is that it's not just about having all of these elements in there. The technology is adapting with us. Our processes aren't, okay? We can't go and trust users anymore. We have to assume breach at every point. So I'd like to take you through just a bit of a breakdown, and this is something that all of you can do. You can do it while you're on the call. You can do it when you're off. Effectively, what we're talking about here is data that's already for sale. Okay. So this is a website that pretty much anybody can access. It's called Have I Been Pwned? And effectively, what I'm going to show you is how you can check if your data is already for sale online. So we're going to go off of my lovely sister's email address. She may have a brother in cybersecurity, but what siblings actually listen to each other? And we're going to move there immediately. 3 data breaches. Okay. So this comes through. We've now got email address and password. Those are login credentials. Okay, that's already for sale. We don't need to, threat actors don't need to break in anymore. Whenever these big attacks happen, all of those credentials go up for sale. Okay, so now you can have a look. They've got physical address, phone number, name, gender, date of birth, email address. They can now start asking the security questions. What was your first home address? What are the last 4 digits of your cell phone number? You know, what's your email address? What's your birth date? All of these IP addresses, all of these elements contribute to vulnerabilities that are now in your day-to-day life. Okay, so feel free to go and have a look at that. We do have dark web scanning and vulnerability scanning tools. This is a very surface level test. The tools that we use, if you'd like to come and have an assessment with us, We'll go in very deep. We'll be able to show you what information is actually for sale already, what information is potentially already being sold. And then on top of that, how to actually scrub that information off of the dark web. This is one of the biggest problems. When people get breached, they don't know about it. Marks and Spencer's getting hit. There was a lot of credentials that went onto the black market. How many times do you or do your staff use the same email for their personal life that they do to log into their computer for work? All right, that gets tested. That's no longer a difficult thing to test. You can get an agent to go and say, here are some credentials, go and test which ones get in. If they do that 10,000 times and they get 10 accounts that log them into an environment, they can now laterally move through 10 businesses to go and start to deploy ransomware, okay? The ROI on that is absolutely incredible for these guys. It's so easy for them. We need to make sure that we've got those robust tools in place. So there's a big word that runs around nowadays called behavioral analysis. My problem is I don't think that this really gets broken down for people enough. So we've put together a bit of a visual, and effectively, if you look at this, think of all of those little streams of data as individual users through a business, okay? All running through the exact same business, each one of them on their endpoint, running on Teams, running on Outlook, running on all of those different elements, okay? Now we come up to a problem. We've identified that there's a problem there. What we're looking at there is not a known breach. We're looking at a behavior that seems strange. We're looking at somebody accessing a file location that they haven't done before, or launching a PowerShell from a OneNote. Okay, all of these things that look strange. We've now got tools that identify that, and this is where some of the alert fatigue comes off, is that these tools go off all of the time. Okay. This sends through an alert to our security operations center, which gets human eyes to go and have a look at it, okay? The next thing that we do is that we cut that off of the environment. We absolutely isolate everything that's happening on that computer now. Then we quarantine it. It's no longer got access to anything else in the environment anymore, okay? We're making sure that the entire business is continuing. It's got business continuity all over the place over here. Everything else is fine. But that one endpoint needed to be looked at. Then effectively, we roll that to a time that it was in a safe location, and now the rest of the business can roll. Behavioral analysis is not about understanding what a threat is once it's already happened. It's about identifying any incidents that look out of place. And this is where we talk about the response is becoming really difficult to kind of prevent. People are logging in nowadays. So we have to be able to understand what's happening in the environment, not have I been breached already? And this is what we're talking about, and we'll get through to some of the new modern cybersecurity protocols, okay? AI in defense, things are moving at machine speed. We need to be able to see those threats at machine speed. We need to be able to mitigate and remediate those threats at machine speed. Identity is the new perimeter. No longer can we trust the user because they logged in with their credentials and with the correct notebook. It doesn't work that way anymore. I think, Matt, we've had a few occasions where something like this has happened, and we've gone in and said it absolutely can't be trusting the user. You can't do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Then we've got insider threats. So it looks like the old school idea of a hacker there with a hoodie on, probably in a dark corner. The insider threats can be a user. It can be somebody who's being coerced. Social engineering is still the most effective way of getting into an environment, okay? This can also be that agent that we're all talking to on a day-to-day basis to ensure that we're getting the correct information. It could have other instructions. That prompt injection is very real. Okay. Then we've got passkeys. Now, passwords are great, but we need to change them every 3 months, and then that institutes bad practices. Okay, because we start to use easier passwords. We swap and change between passwords that we would have been using. If a database gets breached and there's an old password on there, the chances are that that threat actor can try a variation of that password, and now they'll be able to get in. Passkeys removes this from happening at all. You don't hold the password. It belongs to a device, it never leaves that device. It creates a very secure environment where you no longer need to have that. This is something we recommend everybody start to get into at the moment. If you own your credentials become a vulnerability. This removes the ability for that to happen. Okay? Depth in defense. Okay, so we're talking about layering tools on top here. As I said, those tools that were in an outdated cybersecurity solution, still the correct tools. We need EDR solutions on there. We need to be able to understand what the logs are for the business. We need email security. We need to be able to understand what's happening in your network. Those tools are still required, and we need to have them at different layers. If we've got email security, but we don't have endpoint detection and response tool, we can't remediate any issues that are coming through. We can only prevent. If we've got antivirus, we can only defend against what we know. Okay? If we've got EDR, that's great. We can have a look at that. What's happening on the network? So all of those tools need to come in. With the abilities that threat actors have nowadays, they can really identify what's happening from a granular scale at a very far distance for a lot of businesses. Okay, specialist training. We need to understand what's happening with AI. There needs to be somebody in the business who really owns AI, not just understanding what the business is doing with it, but understanding what threat actors are doing with it. And then a zero trust mindset. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about zero trust tools. We're talking about a mindset here. Assume breach at every turn. Make sure that you're interrogating every email that's coming through. Did it really come through from that sender? Does the CEO really need $100 in his account right now immediately? You know, we need to understand what all of that looks like. We need to be looking at assuming a breach every time we see anything out of the normal. Our tools are using behavioral analysis. We need to do the same thing. Okay? So, cybersecurity is evolving. This is where we're talking about the processes. The old way is reactive. We need to be predictive now. We need to use these behavioral analysis tools. We used to be focused on the perimeter, not letting anybody in. They're already in the environment. Now we need to understand what they're doing in that environment. We used to trust users and identities. Now it's a zero trust game. We can't trust any user. Even if they log into their environment, they need to have minimum credentials. If they're logging into SharePoint, what data are they actually allowed to see? You know, we need to make sure that all of those policies are in place to ensure that not everybody has global admin rights, and not everybody can go and see all of the data in the business. Okay, it used to be human-centric. It's not identity-centric. Everything that happens in that business needs to be tied to an identity. Whether that be a human user or an AI, we need to know which identity was doing what. Okay, slow response cycles. This is something that we can't afford anymore. With the speed that AI is running at, we need to be faster. We need to be identifying how it's moving, how quickly it's moving, and how to stop it quickly. Okay, this took the average time to remediate an environment used to take 241 days because threat actors used to sit in the environment for that long, being undetected. With AI, that can now be broken to 11 minutes. So a threat actor can be in the environment for 11 minutes. That only happens if we have AI in the defense. Okay? And then prevention first used to be the name of the game. Keep people out of the castle. Keep people out of the house. Now we need to make sure that we understand exactly what's happening within that house. And we need to be able to go and remediate any of those threats. We need to understand what our supply chain looks like. If we've got vulnerabilities in our supply chain, we've got vulnerabilities in our own business. Okay? We want to look like that guy. How many times have you picked up your laptop and thought, I'm absolutely evil? Right? Okay. So we spoke about some of the challenges that we had earlier. Right? Limited in-house skill, lack of time, low adoption rates. Okay? What we're looking at here is we want to give you access to expert security skills. Okay? So that is our entire team that are working around the clock to ensure that we are monitoring environments, we're monitoring behaviors, we're reducing that internal workload. We're making sure that we've got the right tools in place. Okay? The shifting in compliance. We have specialists that work with us all of the time. We're understanding these frameworks. We're looking at the policies that need to come through. What are the absolute necessities? What are some of the areas where a few changes will get you by for the next 6 months? We need to have a look at this, and it's about being proactive about this compliance nowadays. Okay, And then when it comes down to our data security controls, we are constantly looking at what the latest news is coming through at the moment, how we defend against it, what tools are doing the right job. We're looking at predictable and controlled costs. Effectively, we want to go through to you and say, here's your cost. If we need to change the tool in the background because there's a new threat that's out there, we don't want you to be impacted by it. Okay? We need to be flexible in what we can do. That flexibility to really stay with us, your budget needs to be fixed. We recognize that. All right? So then if we keep on going, some of the advice that we have for staff nowadays, all right? You need AI specialists in your business, whether this is somebody who is an owner who is keeping up to date with the news, that is working with your cybersecurity team or your MSP. They need to have an understanding of what's happening. The threat is moving so quickly at the moment, it's become unbelievable. 3 weeks ago, AI agents working together was a bit of a pipe dream. 2 weeks ago, we saw that there was an entire social media network that was building a black market for it. Last week, we saw that AI was empowering human users to get around captures. This is becoming a problem. It's changing so quickly. We need to understand what those threats are. You need to have somebody in your business who owns this. All right. Incident response plans. Please don't have these on your computer. Your computer is the first thing that goes down when something goes bad. Have this printed out. Have the staff do tabletop exercises. Understand what happens when a breach occurs. What do you need to do next? Who do you need to call? What are the processes? All right. And then modern awareness training. Effectively, security awareness training is great. A lot of the time it's looked at as a tick box exercise. The threat has become more real. The threat is more persistent. It's hitting more businesses. It's hitting businesses with better efficacy. We need to understand what that looks like. Modern awareness needs to include incident response training. How do we mitigate some of those challenges? How do we understand what's happening? What processes do we take? It all comes down to that people, process, and technology. How do we tie all of that in? How do we get every single person in our business to become a security specialist? Okay, there are ways. We provide the training for that. We provide these webinars. We provide that podcast to run through what some of the real challenges are nowadays. Okay, so why does this matter? Okay, governance, risk, and compliance is getting heavier. It's becoming a bigger impact to a business nowadays. Threat detection and monitoring, it's becoming more vital. There are more hits coming through. There are more challenges coming through. We need to understand what that looks like. Okay. Threat prevention and protection. How are we making sure that the environment is safe? How are we making sure that not just outside of our house is understood, but what's happening inside our house is understood as well? Threat intelligence and hunting. You need to have a feed. We've got our own threat intelligence system that we have that's connected to all of the biggest threat intelligence systems in the world. We are constantly feeding that information into your environment to make sure that it's as resilient as it possibly can. Okay, vulnerability and assurance. How often are you actually testing your environment to see that if you've got gaps? If that was 3 years ago, 3 years ago, we were looking at AI simply emerging onto the market. We're in a different space now. If it was last year, that's fine. Agents are now more prevalent than ever. It's not enough. We need to be testing our environments all of the time, okay? And incident response and remediation. How do you know what to do when things go wrong? How many people in your business know how to do that? If your technical director is taking a day off of leave or your head of compliance is taking a day off leave and you get breached, is there a safety plan? Does somebody else know what the processes are? You need to have a team that owns the space. All right. And finally, I'm going to run through this very quickly because I do recognize we're running out of time here. How do we actually help with this? There's a few areas I want to pick up here. It's the flexibility, the quality, and the proactivity in a very big way. We're constantly scanning the environments. We're constantly looking at our own threat intelligence and other threat intelligence that's coming out of the rest of the world. We are adapting what we do in the back end to make sure that we're doing that. We are making sure that our processes are up to scratch, that they're ahead of the game. We're building out our own. We are having a look at how to build resilient systems to make sure that when we place our solution over you, that we are offering you the best protection that we can. We've got to test our supply chain as well. You would become part of that, right? The quality is making sure that we are using the correct tools, not the latest gimmicks. We don't have a Claude bot running in our security center. I can absolutely promise you that. Okay. Then we've got unity and longevity. Future proofing has become a difficult thing. It's no longer just buying one tool and making sure that in 5 years it's still going to be relevant. What we're doing is small iterations all of the time to make sure that that tool is being supported as best as possible. If it needs more threat intelligence going into the system, we make sure that we're doing that. If it needs an extra process on top of it to make sure that it's as effective as it can be, we're making sure of that. All right. So, Matt, I'll hand off to you.
Yeah, as I think as Matt alluded to earlier, if you would like to, I guess, spend a little bit of time with Matt or some of our security professionals, and I guess do a review if you haven't done one recently, or at least within the last 3 to 6 months, then I'd highly recommend that you scan the QR code now, book in a slot, and we will follow up with you after this webinar, and I guess schedule in a review date to take a look at, I guess, your environment and how we can potentially support. If you just want to kind of go next, so the extra bullet points come in, Matt. So included this is an investigation into your current environment. We're going to be identifying the potential security vulnerabilities, as Matt said, dark web scan, vulnerability scanning, so a full network scan included, and recommending some bespoke solutions designed around your environment to kind of improve your finance team, HR team, and other departments. So, right, just going to move on to the Q&A. And because we are just running out of time, going to get round to one of the questions, and I think then we'll follow up on anyone else that had a question afterwards. So first, Matt, we've got, in your opinion, will the primary challenges posed by AI arise from the increased ease of generating attacks, or from the reliance on highly automated processes already present in many organizations? It's a good question.
It is. Look, for me, it's the ease of use. The barrier to entry for a lot of these breaches it's eroding every single day. If we're looking at some of the process that we're seeing now, everything is going to get more and more automated. The thing is to have controls over that automation, to have AI watching those automations to ensure that that behavioral analysis has a chance to really do its job, to be able to look at anything. I'm not necessarily worried about that space if the right tools are in place. If we've got the behavioral analysis, if we've got machine speed analysis happening on top of that, that's not really my problem. My problem is more the ease that these tools are coming out with, that breaches can occur. You need a phone nowadays to go and breach into big environments because you're not using your own compute, you're using the compute of an AI company. And as we've seen, they've got pretty impressive systems. They've got all of the knowledge. So for me, it's if you've got an environment where you've got these tools in place, you've got these processes in place, your people are skilled up enough, you should be in a good spot. My biggest concern is how quickly and how easy it is to actually breach or to get breach tactics nowadays.
Yeah, fine, brilliant. Thank you for that. I guess it's a bit of both. Just going to go to the next slide, please, Matt. And I think we've got enough time for one more question. So thank you so far. The participant asks, I think the number of questions you've presented to ask ourselves is great. Do you have any actionable examples that you already helped SMEs implement? Having greater detail into the protection offered would be greatly insightful, especially with threat intelligence and mitigation. I think that's probably a question we could follow up in a bit more detail afterwards, but if you want to give maybe just a bit of a light answer, and I think we can come back to you, Tim, with a bit more detail after this.
Perfect. Yeah, look, the biggest things that we're doing for a business actually aren't necessarily deploying the AI, but making sure that the environment is ready for AI. One of the biggest risks that we see is that people are deploying or developing their own tools and then deploying AI agents into their environment without making sure that their environment is ready. So they'll have access to all of that data, that confidential data that's in there, and then giving it tools and permissions to be able to go and speak to somebody on Teams or book a meeting in somebody's calendar. I mean, deepfakes is real as well. Look, once AI is implemented, it's really about putting it into the security offering. It's make sure that we've got a machine speed capability to be able to handle any risks that are coming through. When we're looking at this, it's that full kind of process, making sure that we're not just throwing AI into an environment, giving it absolute permissions and letting it run free. But for me, I mean, I'm a security guy. The first place that I'm going to look at is how to bolster my own solution to make sure that things get in place. We talk about the 5-minute rule. If you are looking at implementing AI in your environment, if there are any areas in your business where you are doing a task that takes 5 minutes, but you're doing it 10 to 15 times a day, look at that. That challenge is probably something that you can go and do. Backing your data up or your medic notes from the sales team to the CRM, making sure that any meeting transcripts are being put onto an email that then can be approved to go into either a file or be sent off to the customer. Those are spaces where you can save a lot of time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt. Very thorough as always, very detailed. I think the Maltbot open clause situation, I think, is an absolute eye-opener as to the vulnerabilities that can come about from AI, and I think the way the world is changing. So, Tim, as I say, Matt, if you would like to follow up with that question afterwards, I think there's a far more detailed answer that we can provide and probably some evidence that we can show as well. So for any of those that have also asked questions, we will also come back to you, I think, with an answer. There will be an email coming over with the recording and an opportunity again to book a one-to-one with Matt Brannigan and the security professional team. So please do register, and thank you very much for attending. The webinar is now ended. Matt, appreciate it again, and look forward to the next one. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day. Take care.